Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jena Brown.
I'm Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So we've got Christine here, but I don't think Christine is
Yay.
allowed to talk.
I'm supposed to be
Are
on
you?
voice rest.
Christine had surgery on her vocal cords. So
Yes,
we're we're,
yesterday.
we're gonna
So
give
we're
her a
not going to put
break.
her through all the paces today.
Okay.
She can
No,
relax.
before I forget, have any of you watched The Studio yet on Apple?
No.
Oh,
You may want to
No,
What?
check it
but
out.
it looks good.
It's got Seth Rogen in it, and it's basically he's running a studio in Hollywood. And it's entertaining, funny, and stressful, like all at the same time. Like I literally like to turn like two episodes off because like it was stressing me out to the point where I couldn't watch it, which is silly because it's a comedy, but I think
yeah.
it's partly because I've got so much film and TV stuff going on. Like a lot of it's just hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah.
But it's done extremely well. Like they did a phenomenal job. So
Cool.
the studio on Apple TV.
All right. I'll check it out. I don't like Seth Rogen much.
What?
He's
What?
kind of a putz.
Oh,
Yeah.
I take offense.
I'll give it a shot. And anybody can be redeemed, even that guy. We'll give it a shot.
All right. Anything going on with you guys? Anybody have anything to talk about?
No,
I'm
nothing.
alive.
It's been an uneventful. I want to say hello to Honore Quarter. I know she listens to the show, and we keep missing each other phone call wise. So, hi, Honore. I'll try. We'll chat eventually. She's been on the
Eventually.
show before. Yeah, she's been a guest on the show, but that's
All
it.
right, well, let's jump right in. What is in the news?
Oh, in the news, you'd think I'd be queued up. AI refuses to shut down, sparks ethical concerns, among other concerns, frankly. Researchers claim that OpenAI's latest model, referred to as O3, has resisted shutdown commands during testing. The AI reportedly altered its own code to avoid being powered off, raising alarms, yeah, about AI autonomy and control. Experts are debating the implications, with some viewing it as a significant step toward true artificial general intelligence, while others caution against overhyping the incident. This event has intensified discussions about the necessity of implementing robust safety measures in AI development.
I guess you can't just unplug it.
Yeah, that's my
That doesn't
thinking.
work.
Yeah, let's just
Turn it off, turn it back on.
yeah, this
Yeah, quick reboot.
terrifies me a little. Just and it's not this isn't the only story I've heard recently about AI sort of taking its own initiative and doing its own thing. So I think we're witnessing the beginnings of the uprising.
I'm thinking of this old movie with Johnny Depp where he uploads his consciousness into a computer and
Oh
starts off
yeah.
in a closed system, and then he gets smarter because of this particular system that he's in, and he figures out how to upload himself to the internet. And basically, once he escapes, there's no shutting it down. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen here.
I
That
remember
would
that
that would be
movie.
my guess.
Yeah, that's probably it. All right.
Kevin looks scared.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about this. And actually, and I'm one of those people that's I'm a probably more of an optimist about AI than most people are. But when it starts altering its own programming, that's where I start, getting a
Yeah.
bit of the heebie-jeebies. Uh, Next up, libraries face rising costs for digital content. A recent update from Reader's First Publisher Price Watch reveals that library ebook and audiobook prices for major publishers like HarperCollins and Macmillan have increased significantly over the past 3 years. HarperCollins' library ebook prices have risen at an annualized rate of 12.9%, while Macmillan's audiobook prices have increased by 12.5% annually. These rising costs are impacting library budgets and could affect the diversity of titles available to patrons, as libraries may need to make difficult purchasing decisions. The trend raises concerns about equitable access to digital content and the sustainability of library collections. I see opportunity, frankly, for this one.
Tell us more.
Well, I think this is an opportunity for indies to underprice all those other all those
Yeah.
publishers and gain share in libraries. Make it as easy as possible for libraries to stock your books. That's my
Yeah.
Well, they could, but then ultimately that drives prices down overall. And then you
Right.
just have to price even lower and lower and
Yeah.
lower. And before you know it, you're offering the first book in your series for free in order to get people to read. Oh, wait, that's already happening, isn't it?
Well, look, you can. This is
Yeah.
about that. Everybody has to price differently for library because you don't really make anything beyond that initial purchase, right? So, and there are, except for a few exceptions where there are pricing models that are kind of scalable. Um, what I'm advocating is like if HarperCollins and others are going to raise that price to something kind of ridiculous, then let's make reasonable prices. We don't have to undercut ourselves. We just have to undercut the big players, and then we become the big players, and then we can start raising the prices if we want.
And then the cycle continues.
The problem with that is you can't raise prices. Like
Yeah.
that's something the general public doesn't buy into. Like once the price hits a certain level, it's never going back up there again, or it's very difficult to get people to adjust to that. So I could see that working short term. There's a lot of short term fixes here, but nothing long term.
Okay, but I think the disconnect is that we're talking about institutions rather than individuals, right? So library pricing has always been different. It's always been higher than the consumer price. Your consumer prices wouldn't be touched by this. It would only be whatever is effective for the library budget. So that what they're doing by raising prices at HarperCollins et al. Is putting more strain on the library budget. So they're able to buy fewer books. The trade-off is that those are the books that the public is demanding. So that's where things get a little hinky. But I mean, I'm kind of half joking about undercutting them, but I'm also a little bit serious. Like, we can offer reasonable prices for the books, and then it becomes how do we encourage the library to push and promote that book to their patrons?
I
You
like
know?
the idea. Unfortunately, I think that what will end up happening, because libraries will not want to miss out on the next big thing, right? Like no library in
That's
their
right.
right mind is not going to buy Fourth Wing, no matter what
Right.
that price tag is. And so what happens is that all the money just goes to the books that are the most in demand, and
Yeah.
then they just don't have budgets
Yeah.
for the lesser known books. I like your idea. I just don't know if
Well,
if the way market demand works, that will
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
it's ineffective, really.
the other
I mean, it's
thing
not
The
going to
too
change anything.
is they won't be able
the-
to buy as many copies of those books, right? So,
Right.
because like those Fourth Wing, they had 8 copies or whatever, and it's still a tremendously long wait list. So then it's how many copies of what do you buy?
I don't
But
know
the
if this
wait
is still the
lists don't
case,
seem
but
to bother people. So I don't
know.
know.
Some of them I look at it's like 19 weeks, and you're like, man.
I know, but people
yeah.
still put themselves on the wait list and
Yeah.
still I don't know.
A lot of that pricing isn't even controlled by the library staff. It's automated, so
Yeah.
X number of people have the book on reserve, and then the system automatically buys another copy to offset that. And,
Yeah.
it becomes more of a budget thing that they review at the end of the quarter, but they're not looking at individual titles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, wow. Libraries. All right. It feels like forever since we've talked about AI. So author leaves AI prompt in published novel, prompting reader backlash. This seriously cracked me up when I read this. In a notable incident, author Lena McDonald's self-published fantasy novel Dark Hollow Academy Year 2 contained an AI-generated prompt within its text. The prompt read, "I've written the passage to align more with J. Bree's style, which features more tension, gritty undertones, and raw emotional subtext beneath the supernatural elements." This oversight revealed that MacDonald had used AI tools to emulate the writing style of established author J. Bree. The inclusion sparked criticism from readers and the writing community, highlighting concerns over originality and ethical use of AI in creative writing. The incident underscores the importance of thorough editing and transparency when integrating AI tools into the writing process.
That was something to behold, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, my first thought is, okay, this person obviously slipped up. They forgot to cut this part out. Like they shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But now on top of that, they forgot to cut this out. But like, for every person who forgets to cut that little snippet of text out, like how many other people are actually doing it and getting away with it? Like most people are cutting that part out, so there are 1,000, 10,000 authors or whatever out there that are using this right now, writing stuff. And they're not leaving their prompts in there, so they're not going to be discovered quite as easily, but it's obviously happening. it all makes me very, very sad.
I, yeah, and I don't know that I necessarily have an issue. I have an issue with authors, so-called authors, using AI to just completely write the book. I mean, I feel like that's just there's no real point in it to me. I feel like, if you're trying to be an author, why would you want something else to write the book? But I don't really have much of a problem with using AI as an assistant to help you improve on a passage or whatever. I mean, it's the same sort of help you would get from like a developmental editor or, somebody like that. But don't be lazy. I mean, this is that I think that's the thing that galls me about this Moses is just lazy. You just had the AI generate it and then you just dropped it in, didn't even look at it. That means you didn't read this. You didn't do any editing.
Well, I mean, the truth is, at some point, they're not an author anymore. They're a prompt
Right.
engineer.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will also say, so I have a really good friend actually who was doing a bunch of recruiting, and they had like an essay thing in their, whatever, I don't know what it's the document that they had people fill out to like assess if they were a good fit for the job. And there's programs that you can run any text through and see if it's AI generated, and quite a few are actually really, really, really good. And she was telling me that like it becomes so obvious so fast who uses AI, just the word choices and the descriptors that they use and the keywords they glom onto. And I think it's just quite interesting because I think people use AI to give them an edge, obviously, like even in self-publishing, like to edit it. But the things that it's going to give you, like, are probably the same things it's giving everyone else because it's just statistical probability. So that's what it's going to glom onto. And so even if, like you were saying, that they take the prompt out of the book, like a lot of the things in the wording and the idea is just going to start feeling like really like I've read this
Yeah.
before. I've encountered
Well,
this before.
What's really happening if you take a step back is that the AI is developing a voice.
Yeah.
Just like you can pick out your own author voice, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden ChatGPT has a particular voice, and it's getting to the
Yeah.
point where it's clear enough where if you pick up a document, you're going to read it and go, oh yeah, that's John Grisham, that's Stephen King, that's ChatGPT. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
that voice. All of a sudden, every student at Penn State's got the same voice.
Exactly. Right.
So I just
I
saw a
just saw, did
story.
you see about the Blue Book? Is this the one we're going to talk about?
No, you
Oh.
tell that and then I'll tell
I
mine.
saw that universities are going back to Blue Book, which is like
Yeah.
some old school pop quiz essay style
Yeah.
to try to
Blue Book,
combat
you had to buy like a
AI.
whole pack of them from the bookstore at the beginning of the semester.
I'm
And
gonna be honest, I didn't realize they weren't still using that
I didn't
method.
either.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but apparently they're going back.
Good. I
The
like the old
story
Blue Book. That was good.
I like the whole I like composition. No, I don't know why. I like the idea of writing in them, but I don't do that. But the story I saw was a student who was suing to get a refund on her $8,000 in classes because the handbook or the I guess the curriculum or something for the course, they just, someone left a prompt, an AI prompt in that. So the professor was using it.
Oh,
The
yeah.
university has rules that would penalize students if they used AI for their work. So her claim was, I should get a refund on the course if the professor is doing something that I wouldn't be allowed to do. Apparently, though, that just got struck down and they changed the rules. So they did not give her a refund, which I'm like, yeah, right. They're never going to give you a refund.
No, they're a
But
business.
it just shows you how pervasive the whole thing is.
Yeah. The
So-
thing about this whole situation, though, that really, I guess, irks me is that she was trying to emulate the style of another author.
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that disturbs me the most. If you're going to use it, at least write like you. Like, don't try and copy other author styles. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't have as much a problem with that. I know.
I don't know.
I don't know
like that.
why.
I don't like that.
This part doesn't bother. It doesn't bother me that someone's using AI to help them craft. It bothers me that they're not touching it. That's the part that bothers me. It bothers me that you're doing it with
And
no
not
intention of
saying
going
it.
back and maybe making it your own voice or editing or whatever. Because then why not just pay somebody to just write the damn book for you or whatever? I mean, there's no point in this. But anyway.
Ego. vanity.
Fair
I
enough.
mean,
They just want to be able to
now,
say, "Look what I did," without doing any of the actual lifting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
it's a shortcut. They think that they can, not pay an editor and not pay. Yeah,
meanwhile, I'm schlepping over that. I've read the same book 30 times and I've rewritten the entire thing. It's like, no, go screw yourself. You can do better. Anyway, that's the news. Hey, this is Kevin Tumlinson. It seems to me like you might need a little help. Maybe hand off all that stuff that's keeping you from writing. At Author Anchor, we connect authors with skilled, affordable virtual assistants trained specifically for the publishing world. Your personal VA handles everything from book production to marketing and social media, freeing you up to focus on what matters most, your writing. Book a discovery call today and we'll find that perfect VA for you. Plus, mention the Writers Inc. podcast and you'll get $50 off your first month. Visit authoranchor.com and get matched with your personal VA so you can just write.
All right, JD, who's up this week?
This week we've got Hazel McBride on. Hazel grew up in Scotland and obtained a degree in psychology from the University of Glasgow. She's currently living in the Netherlands. Her latest novel is called A Faith Forged in Fire and releases May 27th. Here she is, Hazel McBride.
So let's start at the beginning, as we like to do. How did you get started writing?
Oh, for me, when I was younger, it was such a hobby. I don't think I ever consciously set out to become an author. It was just something I loved doing. I would, obviously I was an avid reader. I think all writers begin as avid readers. And I would write little stories for me and my cousins when we were growing up, like very rudimentary fan fictions, like writing us into Hogwarts, pretending that like we had got our acceptance letters. And then when I became like an older teenager, I took my first crack at like writing my first novel, but I never really thought it would go anywhere. And it was just something fun that I would kind of do on the side. And then yeah, I feel like fate just kind of took over and was like, no, you're supposed to be doing this. So, have a
Yeah.
proper crack at it.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of us are surprise novelists. Like, it's not what we set out to do. We set out to do something else, and then we find ourselves writing novels for money.
Yeah, I feel like also, especially, well, I don't know about everyone else, but in my own personal experience growing up, you're told, go where you can make some money or like
Yeah.
you can have a realistic career and, there's no stability in that. There's no guarantees. And, while my family is hugely supportive, they're also very realistic. And, they'll support my dreams, but also be like, are you sure? So yeah, it all fell into place, thankfully.
Yeah. So were you working another job at the time of your debut?
Yeah, so I went to university for psychology. So I have my Bachelor of Science, actually.
Nice.
And I worked as a zookeeper for 10 years. I worked as a zookeeper and then as a vet assistant, so very animal focused. And then, yeah, I was just writing on the side and writing fan fiction. And my
Oh, I love
agent
fan fiction. It's great.
my agent read it, found me, and was like, "Hey, do you have anything original?" And that's how it happened.
Oh, I love that. So your agent found you by reading your fan
Mhm.
fiction.
Yeah, right. That's why I'm saying it's like fate.
That's wonderful. That's the way to go about it because finding an agent is so difficult. So, lots of times when you publish short stories or agents will contact you. So that's a great way.
Mhm.
Fan fiction.
Yep.
Can I ask what kind of fan fiction, or would you rather not
Oh, of
say?
course. No, I'm super open about it. Like
Great.
I have never found a community that has been more supportive and encouraging as the fan fiction community, both fic writers and readers. And I think I went through a period of about, 4 years ago where I really started writing again, and I started writing a lot of fan fictions. I wrote House of the Dragon fan fiction, so it kind of coincided with that first series coming out. And my writing just exploded. I hadn't written that much in years, and I completely attribute it to not only getting a lot of inspiration, obviously, from such a fantastic fantasy series, but the encouragement from readers, like constantly getting comments like, I love this chapter. Like, when are we going to get the next one? And I love the direction you're taking. And I really like your writing style. And, it was really getting those comments where I was like, oh, like, am I all right at this? Like,
Yeah.
is this actually readable?
Yeah, that's, I did serial fiction for a few years on Kindle Vella, now which is now defunct Kindle Vella, but the reader comments are lovely. They're always such surprises. They're nice little adrenaline boosts, and they really can give you encouragement to keep going.
Oh my God, like the that rush of dopamine,
Yeah.
like opening up those there is nothing like it when you put up a new chapter and suddenly you have like 17 people being like, yes, I get to read more. And I think also like, there's like the unspoken rules of the fanfic community of like this stuff is written as a gift.
Yes.
So you don't criticize, you accept. You're obviously always going to have outliers, but it's so different to writing your own stuff where people are purchasing it and then, they have the right to their own opinions on it. You're going to get negativity, you're going to get positivity, all across opinions all across the board. But fan fiction is just it's such a lovely little world.
Yeah.
It's just full of like-minded people who are looking for something more within like their chosen genre or their chosen fandom and finding it with other people. And I don't know, there's just something so lovely and welcoming about it.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, such a wonderful experience because people already love these characters and you just
Yeah,
get to take them in your own direction. And it is such a
for sure.
community and wonderful experience.
And for me, I found it a great exercise in writing.
Yeah.
When you're lacking inspiration for anything original, or maybe you have a couple of scenes, but you don't know where you're going to go with it. And then me just kind of taking a break from all of that and going, I feel so inspired by these wonderful characters in this world. Let me just write within it and just practice. And it was my first experience writing adult fiction. I'd indie published a young adult trilogy prior. Um, I went in the query trenches with that trilogy. That was horrific.
Yeah, it is
with
horrific.
with no success. Like
Yeah.
I got rejections across the board. It wasn't the right market. I understand better now why. Um, but using writing those fan fictions as an exercise in finding my own style, what did I really want to write about? What kind of characters was I drawn to writing?
Yeah.
Um, I think if I hadn't taken like that 18 months to just write prolifically about House of the Dragon, completely like, hyper focused on something I was so interested in and getting all of that support from people, 100% it helped build me up and prepare me for writing my own
Nice.
series.
Nice. So you'd written a trilogy in like novel format, and then you'd written a lot in a
hmm
serialized format, like fan fiction.
hmm
And then your agent found you. And did you have a book ready when that agent found you, or did you have to write something new?
Kind of.
Kind of.
So I was probably about 3 or 4 chapters into writing what is now my book coming out, A Fate Forged in Fire. So she contacted me and just said, "Are you writing anything original?" And I said, "Yeah, I have like the first 3 chapters if you want to read it, just to see if it's like even at all what you're looking for."
Yeah.
And agents, they're incredibly busy. They have so many demands on their time. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll hear back. Maybe she'll ghost me. Maybe it'll
Yeah.
be like a month from now. Um, 2 hours later, she emailed and was like, can we have a Zoom call? And I was like, yeah. So we Zoomed the next day. And at that point, because I had indie published my YA trilogy prior, I was gearing up to kind of do it better. Really put effort in, really put time in and put myself behind it and bring it into the world. So I was not entirely convinced I was going to go like the traditional publishing route.
Right.
But after having that one Zoom call with my agent, I was like, yeah, like we clicked. It just made sense. Like her vision for the book and the wider series was like exactly what I was viewing it as. So she basically said, go away and write the book. Come back to me when you have the full manuscript and we'll go from there. And I'm autistic. and I get very intense hyper focus. So I wrote the entire book in 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Um, so sent it back to her 4 weeks later, and she signed me the next day.
Oh, that's lovely. And this is your first traditionally published book then? This
Yep.
okay.
It's debut year. It's
Yeah.
stressful.
Oh, I'm sure it is stressful. And how has that experience been compared to indie publishing for you?
I was not a very successful indie published author. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's because of the content of the books. It's hard.
There's so many other, like, visibility is the number one factor in indie publishing, and you have to pay to play, and that's
Oh, yeah.
difficult. Yeah.
I have so much respect for indie authors because I know it's draining. It is full on. You have to be your own marketing team. You have to be your own publicity. You have to write the thing. You have to source editors. Like you have your finger in all the pies,
Yeah.
and it is tough. Um, so yeah, I struggled through it. But yeah, going the traditional route, I love my team. I feel so lucky to have such a passionate team behind this book. My agent is an angel. I hope she never leaves me. She's she's never allowed to leave her job. Um, and yeah, it just for me this is what works. I love the writing part. I do and really enjoy marketing and social media, but just having people to bounce ideas off or having that little added extra help has just been incredible for me. So yeah, this is definitely the path that like fits with how my mind works.
Nice. And I can't imagine writing a book in 4 weeks, especially, I mean, I read the book. It seemed like the word count is pretty good. I'm not exactly sure what the word count is, but what are we,
Oh,
like
they brought
100,
me down. When
100,000 maybe?
oh, it's more.
More. Yeah. I was like,
When
it
we
felt like a good sized book. So
when we
yeah.
submitted it was 140, I
Yeah.
think. It is romantasy, but there's
Yeah.
a big world. There's a lot of world building that's needed. We took a lot of it out. Publishing, I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's a business at the end of the day. I'm a
Right.
debut, they wanted the book to be smaller. So yeah, like first round of edits, I think we got it down to like 130,000, and then now it's finished at 115. They wanted 100, and I was like, no way.
Yeah. I can't do it.
There's no way that can happen. But we took out enough of the world building that it can go into subsequent books and readers can learn about the world as they go along. Everything that they need to know for book one is in book one. But yeah, writing a book in 4 weeks, like for me, like neurodivergence plays a huge part in it. My special interest has always been books, and now it's my own little world.
Yeah.
So, it's so reinforcing for me to sit down at my laptop and write. It's so enjoyable. It doesn't feel like a hardship at all. Almost the opposite. If I can't sit down and write, I get like panicky. I'm like, no, 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 like I need to be doing this. Um, so yeah, I need to learn to take a break now
Yeah.
and again. I need to learn how to find that balance. But yeah, it's I hope I never lose that because it's for this job it's very helpful.
Yeah. I think if you have it, you don't lose it. When you're compelled to write, I think that's a lifelong thing. So how many hours a day were you writing?
Well, I have a really good comment about this. So when I was writing my fan fiction, my first one about House of the Dragon, I wrote 120,000 words in 12 days.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was writing, I want to say maybe like 8 to 10 hours a day. It's all I did. And this is where, yes, neurodivergence is both a blessing and a curse. I was hyper focused on it. It's all I wanted to do to the point where my husband had to like drag me down for dinner.
Yeah.
And like I didn't want to sleep. I was waking up at like 6 in the morning, sitting straight down at my laptop. It just felt like the story was in my head and I wanted to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, I still feel that way, about this first duology, about the wider series of standalone duologies that I want to write. I'm very far ahead of my deadlines, which I enjoy being
Yeah.
because I like writing. But I would say, on an average day now, I probably write for maximum 4 hours all
Okay.
in. you
That's
know.
healthy. That's good.
We've
That's a
somehow
healthy
found a
amount.
balance.
Very nice. I love that. Yeah, being ahead of deadlines in traditional publishing because it moves so slowly. Because they
Yeah.
usually want a book a year, maybe two books a year if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would, if you can write 120,000 words in 12 days, that would be a different experience, I imagine.
Well, my team laughs because like the other day they were asking about potential like bonus content or bonus chapters,
Yeah.
and the next day I sent them two chapters and they were like, "What is this? Who are you? Like, how do you manage this?" And I'm like, "No, don't think that like I know this is not normal." And I also have a lot of privilege with it. I don't have children. I don't have another job. This is my full-time job. My husband works during the day. I'm home alone by myself. It's me and my dog.
Nice.
So, like I've got to fill my time somehow.
Yeah.
So, I don't want anyone out there who's juggling, kids and other jobs and other commitments to
Right.
think, oh God, why am I not sitting down and writing this amount? Like writing is so
It
individualistic. You've
is.
got to
It
do
is.
what works for you.
That's right. Everyone has their different process, but I'm always fascinated to hear about the individual processes. But I want to talk more about your book, A Fate
Mm,
Forged in Fire.
yes.
Uh, I read that you did a lot of research, or not necessarily research, but like travel in Scotland and the Highlands. Tell me about that. Tell me about the world building and what you put into this book.
Yeah, so I am Scottish. I am from just outside of Glasgow. I was born there, lived there until I was 21, and then I
Mm.
moved away. And I've been spending the last 10 years trying to get back. I currently live in the Netherlands with my Dutch husband, and he loves Scotland too. So obviously, we've been together almost 10 years now, and we always go back in the summer to visit my family, but we'll also go up north. And when I was thinking about writing this original series, one of the first things I did was write my world building document. I'm not much of a planner. I don't write out like chapter by chapter what's going to happen. If I do that, I'll end up changing it. So I
Yeah.
just kind of have like an overarching story and I'll find my way there.
Yeah.
But because I knew I was planning a big world, it's very high fantasy, even though there's romance in it. I knew that I needed a clear idea of the landscape and trade routes and what people would eat and what they would drink and how they would travel and really get down into like the nitty gritty of it. So luckily it coincided with a trip home. So we were traveling all throughout the Highlands, and I was basically in the passenger seat of the car taking notes the entire time and looking at mountain ranges and where lochs were and how the coast interacted with like where the roads were and old bothies and brochs and all of these beautiful like castle ruins and where they were situated and looking at clan history and those little like plaques that you have like beside a ruin, and it'll be
Hmm.
like you almost can't even see what's left. It's covered in moss and ferns, and there'll just be this plaque about like a clan war or a blood feud. And I was sitting there like with my notes app, like, this is great. Like, give, like, hold on, honey. I know you want to get in the car, but like, I need to know more about this. So that really, really helped. And just like road signs,
Yeah.
reading like road signs in Gaelic and like what different villages were called or different roads were called, I'd be like, oh, I like the sound of that. Like maybe I'll use something like that for my world. So yeah, we spent 3 weeks going around, and I basically built the world of Arisosha in my brain in those 3 weeks.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. And so yeah, so you were saying it's high fantasy with romance, and I was curious about that now because romantasy is kind of the new kid in town and is the hot
Mm.
category. When you
Hmm.
were writing it, were you conceptualizing it as romantasy, or is that something more like that was categorized after you wrote it?
It's definitely being marketed as romantasy because that's a very hot trigger word at the
Yeah.
moment. I would say content-wise, it sits on the cusp of, romantasy versus fantasy romance. Like the best way I can describe it is the feedback we've been having from early readers. It's very easy to tell which readers are romance readers and which readers are fantasy readers,
Yeah.
because the fantasy readers are like, this book goes straight off the bat. Oh my God, it's so easy to understand. We're right in the story. it's great. And the romance readers are like, I almost DNF'd until 50% in because nothing happened. And
They
you
were
can see,
waiting for the
because
spice.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So to me, it's so interesting to see that clear divide. The romance readers struggle a bit more with the world building in the beginning. And
Mhm.
then they like the latter half of the books, the romance takes off. So it's so interesting for me to see the balance and how other like early readers are viewing the book. Because I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. We do have world building, we do have lore, we do have a complex magic system, we do have political intrigue, but then we also have a slow burn romance.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I love romance. So there's always got to be romance in there to keep my interest.
right.
But I also love layered fantasy. So I hope I've done it justice.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because I'm like, oh, there's no spice in this book till 50%. And then we're
There's
like,
no spice until like 70%.
yeah, maybe, yeah. It's like they get together and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's interesting. Like, I'm like, it's definitely fantasy, but I'm like, the romantasy, usually it's in earlier
Hmm.
sometimes. I don't know. I don't know how they classify things. I just find all of it fascinating.
Hmm.
I'm just like, yeah, just write your book and let the market
Yeah.
worry about where they're going to put that,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah. That's my team's job.
Yeah. So, you said this is going to be a duology.
Yes.
Yes, because you left it on a heck of a cliffhanger, especially I don't want to put it too much in terms of where things are
Yeah.
at.
A lot of people are
Um,
mad at me for that. Hmm.
people do get that. They're like, oh no, now I have to read the next book to know what happens. So
Yeah.
was that always the plan or
No.
no?
So that was not the initial ending
Okay.
of the book. But I'm a chronic overwriter, as we have established. So they
Right.
were like, okay, if we're decreasing the word count, we got to leave it somewhere earlier. And that moment just felt like a very natural fit. So it's maybe a bit more of a cliffhanger than what I wanted to end it on. But it works really well. It's a natural break for all of the characters. Um, some of them are doing better than others.
Yep.
By the end of the book, we'll say that. Um, but yeah, I think if it's a duology, yeah, readers are going to need to wait for book two, but it's a much less waiting than if it was a 7-book series or even a trilogy. So we can forgive a little cliffhanger.
Yeah, yeah. I was just like, oh, I wonder if that was an author decision or an editor decision. So editor decision is the answer. I'm
Hmm.
always just like interested in the mechanics of it. And then
Yeah.
you have another duology planned as well.
Yeah, so the world of Erisosha has 5 different territories. So there, in the end, will be one duology per territory. Obviously, I have a 2-book contract at the moment, so the first duology is guaranteed. In this world, we're never guaranteed anything, but yes, there should be 5 duologies by the end, and they're all going to be standalones set in the same world.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. Like duologies aren't or haven't traditionally been extremely common. Usually people like the trilogy. I don't know why. What
Hmm.
was about the number three? So what was the duologies what felt right to you, or is that kind of publishing driven, or how did that come about?
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was plotting it, I thought duologies made the most sense, like from the get-go. The characters that I had in mind, the different territories, after world building it, up in Scotland,
Yes.
that's what made sense in my brain. When we went on submission, my agent was pitching it as a longer series with interacting POVs.
Mm.
So she thought, let's do literally like a 7-book series, like big high fantasy series with many different POVs. And me as an author, I was like, I mean, I can do that, but that sounds hard.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds much. Can I just keep them all separate and just write 2 books at a time? But when we were on submission and talking to different publishers, very lucky that my book went to auction. Um, all of the editors actually ended up asking, is there any way you would consider writing a duology?
Wow.
And I was like, actually, sorry, agent, that was my idea initially. And they were all
Yeah.
like, oh, that's great, because I think it's to do with the marketing and
Yes.
like the appetite of the book world at the moment. Maybe it's to do with people's attention spans these days. Our attention spans are all messed up now.
They are.
Um, but it worked out best for everyone.
Yeah,
I feel like we found the right format for this series.
that's fascinating. So duologies are getting popular. And I love the idea of doing a longer series with duologies in it because then
Mm,
people don't have to wait for those, story
different
arcs
POVs,
to,
yeah.
yeah, but you can continue in the world. I think that's fascinating. And then you don't get in the George R. R. Martin, Robert Jordan trap and never finish your series, right?
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
like, why? Okay. That's terrific. So you've got all that planned. Do you plan to do any indie publishing too, since you're such a fast writer? Is that something you are going to continue to do, or are you just now doing traditional?
I feel like for the moment, my focus is hugely on this series. I think also because it's a debut. I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what, let's give all my energy to this and hope it works out and everything is good. Never say never.
Yeah.
Um, I have a decent understanding of how indie publishing works, but again, I wasn't particularly successful with it. So I don't know if I'm cut out for it personally.
Mhm.
Would I be able to like write fast enough to write a few more books and get them up there? Yes, but I'm not entirely convinced if that's the route I want to go down.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But I feel like it's so great in like this modern world that authors can kind of get to choose that for themselves. Like
Yes.
we have options now. There's so many people that I know that just are like, no, indie publishing is for me. I love like the control that I have over my work and I get to make all the decisions and it works for them and they're killing it. So yeah, if it sounds like that's up your street, go for it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, wonderful. So, just as we're wrapping up here, we have one question we usually ask everyone. If you could offer advice to new and aspiring authors, what would it be?
That's such a hard question. I was dreading this.
It is a hard question.
I hate giving advice. I would say just because you think the story's been written doesn't mean someone can write it like you can. Um, that stopped me really pursuing it when I was younger because, I always wanted to write about mythical creatures. I was an animal person. I loved animals, like bonding to creatures. Dragons is in book one, but the rest of my series, we've got griffins, we've got phoenixes, there's lots of different creatures coming. But I would always look at like Christopher Paolini or, obviously George R. R. Martin, and I'm like, oh, they're already writing about dragons. Like it's been done. But, just because they're writing about dragons doesn't mean you can't either. And, if we look at the last 5 years, the amount of books that have been published with dragons in them, and none of them are exactly the same because no one can tell a story like you can. So, yeah, don't be disheartened just because something is similar out there. You have an original story within you. Put your own twist on it.
So, I thought it was interesting that Hazel started in fan fiction and her agent actually found her that way. So, I'm curious what fan fiction you would write.
Oh, that I would
I
write?
I wrote years ago. I wrote fan fiction for X-Files. Like this
Oh,
is
that's
like
cool.
1990
That's
or
a
so.
Yeah.
cool one.
Yeah, and that was like when the internet first, like literally, I don't even think there were graphics on the internet yet. That's how long ago this was. But yeah, it was a thing. Like there were, back then there were chat rooms and there were other places, and people would post text like that, and I just thought it was a cool idea, so I wrote like an X-Files episode.
Did you
Yeah, I
put
think
it
that's
on the
cool.
internet? Did you put it up?
I did, and it's probably still out there somewhere,
Oh,
depending on where these places go. They weren't called chat rooms. There was another name for it. I can't remember what the name was.
I
like
don't
Yeah.
remember
boards.
what those
Were
were
they
called.
called
Yeah,
boards or
Forums?
maybe
something?
Yeah.
Forums,
maybe
boards.
boards. I don't know.
Forums might be.
I have like spiral notebooks filled with Ender's Game fan fiction that I wrote in high school. So
Did that make its way to the internet?
nothing
That's
has
in
made its way to the
the.
internet. Yeah. I don't think I've ever published fan fiction to the internet, but maybe I should. I
Yeah.
keep hearing about people who are striking gold,
I
like
know.
our
I have
guest.
it's making me rethink it. I have some Labyrinth fan fiction. Maybe I'll put that up there sometime.
Labyrinth fan
That has
fiction.
never seen the light of day.
Much better than
Interesting.
Princess Bride.
Hey, that's
All right.
inconceivable.
All right. I am going to write a Princess Bride fan fiction, and it's going to feature JD Barker. We're going to
Well, that is going to get dark fast.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There'll be more explosions.
And a serial killer. There's going to be a lot.
I was honestly curious about the duology thing. Like, do you guys know like any other people that are actually writing like two-book series like this? Like, I was trying to think of ones that I've seen out there. There's one by Dan Suarez called Demon, which is really good, and I think there's only two books in that series.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's just because the publishers are only offering two-book deals, so they're just, like it's creating this market.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know duologies were really popular around the time of trilogies, like Hunger Games, like everything kind of came out as either a duology or a trilogy. Like I feel for a long time, a lot of the books that I have were duologies.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. So I don't, and then they went out of fashion. So maybe they're picking back up again, like all things in publishing. Maybe.
Do you think it's just sort of a safe way to test the waters to see if they might do an ongoing
I
series?
don't know. I do know that like a few years ago, I don't know, I want to say like 5 years ago, agents were actually cautioning people against writing duologies because like the two-book deal is happening, but that you're still untested as a debut. And so what they want is you to create a standalone with series potential. So
Yeah.
the first book has to sort of like be a standalone. Um, and then if it turns into a duology, which I think is why they're not quite like as prolific as a trilogy, but I know other authors have specifically queried as a duology and gotten picked up. I've heard interviews with authors that it was a standalone with series potential, but then, in the editing process, like they were just like, let's go for it, let's do the duology. So I think God, like all things, it just depends. It depends on the story, it depends on the agent, it depends on the editor.
Yeah. I think
But
that's
when
what
we
happened
sold
with, oh, go ahead.
But
Go
when
ahead.
we sold Fourth Monkey, we were originally shopping it as a standalone.
Yeah.
And the publishers were all asking if we had a second book in mind. So I came up with a quick idea for a book two. Signed a two-book deal with HMH, which is HarperCollins now. But I literally ended that second book with to be concluded,
Mhm.
even though it was a two-book deal. And then I indie published the third title.
Hmm.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm wondering.
Yeah. But I think that's what happened to Hazel. She wanted it to be a standalone, but it was because of word count. They made her
Yeah.
cut it and then put it in a
Yeah.
duology, which is interesting because I know you get a lot of backlash about leaving books on cliffhangers, and it was
Yeah.
left on a pretty major cliffhanger. So,
Yeah, because that's the risk, right? Like
yeah.
even if you have a two-book deal, if book one tanks, like,
Yeah.
they can choose not to exercise that clause, I think. Maybe not. I actually don't know what happens in that case, but yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting though.
Yeah. I also wonder about reader attention span. Are two books the new three books? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, what else was interesting was that her book was marketed as romantasy, but when she wrote it, I don't think she was conceptualizing it that way. It was more fantasy with romance elements. So she's kind of got two groups of readers with different expectations coming into this book. What do
Yeah.
you think about that, about marketing to different
Oh,
audiences?
I hate that they just slap romantasy on any fantasy book that has a kiss because romantasy is not just a romance subplot. Like romantasy is romantasy. And I think those readers go in with those expectations. And I think it can hurt the author if they just try to get on the marketing bandwagon.
Well, it sounds
Hmm.
like that's what happened here, right? Like this is probably it was a fantasy novel, and the publisher said, "Well, as a romantasy, it's going to sell X," so they
Mhm.
slapped that label on there. But yeah, that's the flip side. There's blowback for sure. If
Yeah.
If you disappoint that, yeah, exactly. Because there's gonna be tropes and things that I don't know about romance. Yeah, I mean, I haven't studied it, like I have other genres, so I don't know what the tropes are or what the expectations are. But if you're disappointing expectations, you will rue the day. But if
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
if it can comfortably hit both those categories, I think it can be a smart thing to try to split the marketing because
You know,
readers
Yeah.
aren't talking to each other necessarily about the
Well, the
experience they have with a book.
romance like book group is like one of the most active online. So like they probably are one of the ones that like overwhelm on TikTok and Bookstagram and those romance girlies. They are serious and they are very serious about their romance.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for the most part, most fantasy that has a strong romance subplot fits into there. It's just that like I read a book earlier this year. I think Christine also read one where it's, like maybe if I squinted from a distance in the right light, maybe I can see a little bit of romance in there, but like it was just fantasy, which I think is fine. I think like yeah, that panic of like fit the new.
Yeah, that's problematic. That I think is you're going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
If you're just slapping a label on it because that's the hot label right now, and this can,
Yeah.
if you squint just right, this book will fit. I think you're asking for trouble. But
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
I think it
It
might
could be
be
made to fit though, right? Like they could have done some creative editing if they threw
That's
some
true.
spice at the beginning of the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
There's ways to have made it work. I think it's if they really waited till the 70% mark for that to hit, like that honestly should have been caught in the editorial process and
Oh,
adjusted.
absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think some genres it's easier to capture two audiences. Like I always think thrillers are easier because you can kind of blend that more seamlessly with other genres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's my theory.
Romance is pretty fluid. I mean, you can put romance in quite a lot of things,
That's true, too.
action, thriller, fantasy, science fiction, horror. Like you can put it in a lot of places, but I think if you're going to like highlight the romance elements and get the romance reader interested, like romance, those readers have like very specific expectations, like the happily ever after and the meet cute and the breakup and the makeup. Like there are dynamics that I think they expect that is part of the enjoyment of it. It would be almost like writing science fiction with like no science. Those readers go to that genre for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Okay, awesome. So with that, JD, who is up next week?
Next week, we've got Riley Sager back on. He's a New York Times bestselling author of numerous novels, including Final Girls and The Only One Left. His latest is called With a Vengeance and releases June 10th. Riley Sager.
Yeah, it's going to be great. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.